Well, it's time to take UUCC Zoom In Live to the next level. And I've got just the idea with Mark Weber as our next guest. You know, Mark has regaled us for years with sermons where he shares wisdom from Nubs the barber. But no one's ever seen the guy. I wonder if Nubs actually exists. I think it's time to start doing a little bit of research. Come on, join me. Nubs? Nubs? Anybody here know Nubs? So excuse me, sir, have you ever seen Nubs? Ever heard of Nubs?
I don't think I've ever heard the name Nubs.
So there you have it, one more person, one more barber, no Nubs. So we just asked here too, and nobody here heard of Nubs either. Nubs is nowhere to be found. So there you have it. We've roamed around town, checked the barbershops. No one's seen Nubs. Nobody's even heard of Nubs. We'll see what Mark Weber has to say about this when he's on the show. So join me. UUCC Zoom In Live, October 26th, 8 to 9 p.m. with my co-host, Jenna Bradbourne, and of course, the Jack Ullman Comedy Moment. We're going to call the episode The Case of the Missing Nubs. Hope to see you then. Take care now. Bye.
What is it about this flame that opens our ears, opens our hearts? Come back to your center, it calls. Return to that quiet space we long for and that longs for us. From this stillness, always a voice arises if we let it. So come, friends, let us listen once again. Let us find that flame inside that guides us back home. Come, let us worship together.
You may have heard that listening is a lost art. Today, in our service, we focus on the spiritual practice of deep listening. There'll be music by Mike Carney and the choir, a story by Allan, Georgia, called The Rabbit Who Listens, a reflection by our worship associate, Valerie McFadden, and of course, I have some thoughts to share from the Little Sutra this time. So, welcome to our worship. Settle down, settle in, get comfortable, and come on in.
Please join me in our Unison Reading. Listening is about being present, not just about being quiet.
Hi, I'm Mike Carney. I'm the music director at the UU Congregation of Cleveland, and I'm joining you today on this beautiful fall afternoon from my backyard. I was asked to say a few words today about listening in music. Notice I didn't say about listening to music. I love to listen to music, as I'm sure most, if not all of you do as well. But listening to music is a passive act. It's something you can do while your mind is occupied with something else, like driving a car, or doing some work, or washing the dishes, or other household chores. Listening in music is the way that musicians have to listen to one another, and sometimes also to their audience, to respond to large and small cues to make sure that the music is working in the best possible way. Musicians, in the midst of live rehearsal, in the midst of live performance, are constantly making adjustments. Adjustments to tempo, adjustments to dynamic levels, adjustments to blend and balance and breathing. All of these things are essential to making sure a music performance is all that it should be. The conductor, Leopold Stokowski, once compared the silence before his orchestra would begin playing to the blank canvas that a master artist would look at before beginning a painting. Stokowski's point was that if there wasn't that perfect silence, then the music really should not begin, because the music would be diminished or even ruined by any presence of some other noise, some other sound in the background that would detract from the composer's intent. And even in that orchestral setting, all the musicians on stage in a large orchestra or a band or a choir, all those musicians are listening very closely to one another. Yes, they have their eyes to look at what the conductor is telling them, but really they're using their ears more than their eyes to make sure they're coordinating all of those elements that I talked about before, about tempo and rhythm and timbre and intonation and 100 other things. Jazz musicians, when it comes to improvisation, have to listen even more actively, even more intently. They're listening for what chord changes are the other musicians playing. I've reached a point here in this song, if I'm in a jazz ensemble, where the music I'm playing is no longer represented anywhere on the page. And so I have to listen very carefully to what the bass player or the drummer or a horn player or someone else is doing, so that I understand, should I be stepping forward right now and taking over as a soloist? Should I be hanging back and allowing somebody else that freedom to do that? And so there's a constant interplay and there's a constant communication when it comes to improvisatory music like jazz. What many people may not realize, but any musician will tell you, is that listening is even an essential act if you're making music by yourself. If you're singing or playing an instrument all by yourself, it is of the utmost importance that you listen carefully. How's your pacing? How's your tempo? How's your dynamic level? Are you too loud? Are you too soft? How does this part that you're doing right now compare to the part that you did just a minute ago? And so listening as a musician is an active act. And there's a lesson to be taken from that as well. When we listen to one another, when we communicate with one another, we should strive to be active. We should strive to be like the improvising ensemble. Let me take my cue from what someone else is trying to say to me, rather than just going ahead, waiting to talk, and thinking of listening as a passive act, something I can do while I'm busy driving or, reading something else. If I want to show someone that I really understand them, that I really care about what they have to say, then I need to make my listening active. So I encourage all of you to listen like a musician listens the next time you're in a conversation with someone. I hope you have a wonderful day and a great week, and I hope to see you again soon.
Listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees. They are in the groaning woods. They are in the crying grass. They are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never, never left. The dead have a pact with the living. They are in the woman's breast. They are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes. They are with us in this crowd. The dead have a pact with the living. So listen more often to things than to beings. Listen more often to things than to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath when the fire's voice is heard. 'Tis the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters.
One day, Tayler decided to build something. Something new. Something special. Something amazing. Tayler was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it, cluck, cluck. But Tayler didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Grar, rar, how horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Grr, rar, grar. But Tayler didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Trumpada, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Tayler didn't feel like remembering. So the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena, hee hee, let's laugh about it. The ostrich. Gulp. Let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo. Tisk, tisk. What a mess. Let's just throw it all away. And the snake. Shh. Let's go knock down someone else's. But Tayler didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually, they all left. Until Tayler was alone. In the quiet, Tayler didn't even notice the rabbit. And it moved closer and closer until Tayler could feel its warm body. Together, they sat in silence until Tayler said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Tayler talked. The rabbit listened as Tayler shouted. The rabbit listened as Tayler talked. The rabbit listened as Tayler remembered. The rabbit listened as Tayler laughed, shouted. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide. The rabbit listened to throw everything away. The rabbit listened to ruin things for someone else. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide. The rabbit never throw everything away. The rabbit listened to ruin things for someone else. When the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. I can't ruin things for someone else. Right, the rabbit listened. It's going to be amazing.
Please join me in our unison reading. Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose, to help him or her to empty their heart. Each week, we come together as a people. Together, we share stories, love, aspiration. We also share our bounty in ways that express our religious UU values. May this important ritual of sharing abundance remind us that making our world better is a task best shared.
Today's theme is the spiritual practice of listening. I don't know about you, but I don't always get as much out of worship as I need to. Sometimes my impulse is to blame the worship service, but then I remind myself that part of my experience comes from what I bring. We come here together to make meaning. It is not a passive activity like watching a movie. So my question is, how can we engage more deeply in worship? While researching this question, I found an article called Listening as a Spiritual Practice by Alexandra Bell. Bell is part of the Society of Friends. The Friends are known for their style of worship, where they sit in silence until a member of the community is moved to speak and bring a message for the congregation. Such an unstructured service requires deep listening, so I figured Belle would have some useful insights for us, and I wasn't disappointed. What follows is a kind of how-to for worship, inspired by her insights. Step 1 is preparation, centering, connection, and gratitude. There are many techniques to center yourself, such as sitting quietly, attending to the breath, prayer, meditation, music. One advantage of online worship is that you can take as long as you want with the preparation phase and tailor it to what works for you, whether that be playing inspirational music or calling the directions. The important thing is to be intentional about what you do. Next is connection. Affirm that we are engaging in a shared experience. Again, make it your own, whether it be greeting people in chat, bringing their presence to mind, or seeking to connect with them metaphysically. Of course, you have other options when meeting in person, such as smiles, waves, conversations, and hugs. As you connect, focus on being here together to make meaning. Next is gratitude. Cultivate gratitude for the speakers, musicians, and technical support people, and also for those further removed, the composers, writers, theologians, the UUA leaders, and the ancestors upon whose work we stand. As you move into the service, still your inner critic, listen carefully, and be open to the message. Still your inner critic. Try to stay in the moment and not get pulled into evaluating performance and presentation. If you notice yourself going down this path, gently let evaluation go as a distraction and bring your attention back to the content of the service. Pay attention. While obvious, this is not always easy. Listen carefully to the words. Perhaps there are key words that speak to you. Tune into the images you see and emotions you are feeling. You may want to take brief notes that you can review later. An advantage of recorded services is that you can always go back and rewatch a segment. Describing openness to the message, Alexandra Bell says, "We need to listen to the spirit behind the words. Sometimes we have to translate phrases into something we understand better. If a message is too New Age, is there a Bible passage with a similar theme? If the message is too Christ-centered, can we find a universalist theme instead? Does it sound too mundane, as if pulled from the newspaper or Facebook? Look to the eternal behind the everyday. Be careful. It is easy to get caught up in editing and lose the message. If we get too involved in disagreeing or correcting, we should let it pass like any other distraction. I can easily hear God's word in the birds outside or in a child's laugh, so the message does not have to be profound to be meaningful. We need to listen with love. Reflection. Allow yourself to reflect on what you see and hear. Reflections tend to occur naturally as you listen. You may experience insights about your life or family, your relationships, or changes you want to make. Or perhaps your reflections range wider, anywhere from your congregation and community to the interdependent web of existence. After service comes coffee hour. Coffee hour can be an opportunity to promote spiritual dialogue and deepen our relationships. Don't be afraid to talk about the worship experience. Remember, people are here to make meaning together, and many will welcome the opportunity to engage at a deeper level. Try sharing something specific, like a new insight, an emotional reaction, a question, how you felt challenged, or how you felt the congregation was being challenged. Relax and use the listening skills of connection, openness, and stilling your inner critic to pay close attention during your coffee hour conversations. You can continue to engage with the message during the week. This may not happen with every worship service, but when you feel such an inclination, nurture the spark. You can journal, learn more about a topic or issue, discuss ideas with others, set a goal or intention. And don't be discouraged if you don't meet your goal. Be gentle with yourself. Just engaging with the process is significant. I hope you'll try some of these tips and find them valuable. Again, they are: prepare through centering, connection, and gratitude. During the service, still your inner critic, pay attention, be open, and reflect. And finally, continue to engage with the worship service during coffee hour and throughout your week. I look forward to seeing you at coffee hour.
We are in a time of great stress in our world, in the world. In addition to the normal stressors of life, we have added this year many more. Record-breaking wildfires in the West, the disregard of Black and brown bodies across our nation, separation of children from their parents in the Southwest, hurricanes in the South. A very contentious election cycle that is slowly moving to its conclusion, and a global pandemic for which there is no yet known end date, if one exists at all. There is so much to worry about, so much about which it is normal to feel some anxiety around it. If only we all had someone who could really listen to us as we worry, as we need to talk about our worries, someone to just listen with a kind of deep attention that makes each of us understand that we are being heard. Well, I want to tell you a story. It's a story of a person who listens. The story comes to us from a sacred text called The Wonderful Dharma of the Lotus Sutra, a text in Buddhism. The Lotus Sutra was most likely compiled in the 1st century of the Common Era, around 500 years after the death of Siddhartha Gautama, or the Shakyamuni Buddha, or simply the Buddha, roughly the same time as the Christians began to record their own testaments. The Lotus Sutra is a central text of the practice of Mahayana Buddhism, and it is a sutra that I studied in seminary under the teachings of the very honored Michio Shinozaki. The Lotus Sutra contains 28 chapters, of which chapters 5, 10, and 25 are my favorites. Today I want to bring you the story of the subject of chapter 25. And in order to do this respectfully, I'm going to teach you some perhaps new words and concepts. A person who practices Buddhism is one who believes that the ultimate destination for someone's essence is to reach enlightenment. To reach enlightenment is to achieve nirvana. Dharma means the teaching or the way. I'll be using the word bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a person who helps others on their journey to achieving nirvana. They come in many forms. A kotis is a large number, the largest number, like 10 million at the time. Every being is a potential Buddha, which means the enlightened one. As with any ancient holy text, we need to read it with reverence, but also remember the context from which it comes, whether the text be Judaic, Christian, Buddhist, Zoroastrianism, or history by Herodotus, or the philosophy of Plato. As a people of a liberal faith, a self-examining faith, we are free to sit with the text, consider what feels truthful and useful to us, and adopt which seems to be both. Having said this, I offer you the story of Guan Yin, the Bodhisattva, regarder of the world's cries. Guan Yin is also known as Kuan Yin and is one of the most famous bodhisattvas of all. Guan Yin, or Kuan Yin, has been known to exist in both male and female forms. Guan is usually his more ancient name, and Kuan her more modern name. And by that, I mean her name that begins to supplant Guan during the Song dynasty around the year 1000, or 500 years after the compilation of the sutra itself. This gender fluidity is completely within the text of the sutra itself, because within the text, Kuan Yin has the ability to appear in many forms, whichever form is most comforting to the person who needs them to appear. Because of this, I will also be alternating between the masculine and feminine forms of their name and refer to this bodhisattva in the singular sense as they. For the time being, it isn't important whether or not you can or do believe that Kuan Yin can appear before a person who prays to them. It does not matter if you believe that Guan Yin has powers at all, although they are worshipped as one of the great bodhisattvas. For my purpose today, what matters is what you understand about the mission of Kuan Yin. It is Guan Yin's mission to listen to the cries of all the sentient beings in the world. After living on earth, the story goes, as they were ascending into nirvana, they heard the cry of someone in need and turned back from nirvana to witness to their need. There really exist two stories of Kuan Yin. There is a story about them in the Lotus Sutra text itself, and then there is the worship practice that has grown up around them around the world. Here is the beginning of chapter 25 of the wonderful drama of the Lotus Sutra. At that time, the Bodhisattva of infinite thought rose up from his seat, and baring his right shoulder and folding his hands toward the Buddha, spoke thus: "World-honored one, for what reason is the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara named regarder of the cries of the world?" The Buddha answered, the Bodhisattva of infinite thought, "Good son, if there be countless hundreds of thousands of myriad kodis of living beings suffering from pain and distress who hear of this Bodhisattva regarder of the cries of the world, and with all their mind call upon his name, the Bodhisattva regarder of the cries of the world will instantly regard their cries, and all of them will be delivered." And thus the Buddha begins to teach about this being whose name goes back to the earliest Sanskrit traditions of Buddhism in two forms, a narrative form and a poetic form. What Guan Yin has come to be in the Buddhist world is a redeemer, a rescuer, a companion to the troubles of all those who reach out to them. Kuan Yin has accepted this responsibility to listen to the cries of the world so that none cry unaccompanied. Which is why I bring you this story today. This Bodhisattva has chosen to help all sentient beings to reach enlightenment by deeply listening to the pain and anguish of other beings. To sit, to listen, to witness, to accompany. Can there be a higher calling? And that is really the question of the day. Can there be a higher calling than sitting with someone and deeply listening to their story? As with many ancient and holy texts, we need not embrace the totality of their story to find the very human questions within the story. We need not believe in the miraculous to find the value of the ordinary human condition that each fantastical story contains. Each moment we are alive, we live in a world that never existed before this moment. We are consistently and constantly in a new world. It's just that in a time of great stressors like the pandemic, the wildfires, the hurricanes, the election, the violence against Black and brown lives, it's these moments when all the things come into focus at once that we really need someone to hear our anguish and our pain. One of the truly inspiring things about being a bodhisattva in the Buddhist tradition, a person who helps others achieve enlightenment, is that both are available to every ordinary human being. You are both capable of becoming a bodhisattva and a Buddha. You can help people reach enlightenment, and you yourself can reach it just by being ordinary you. Ordinary you who helps. One way you can help is to listen. Now, I know that I do not have the capacity to regard the world's cries, but I can regard the cries of one person at a time. I can bear witness to the pain, fear, suffering, and joy of one person now, and another now, and another. And so can you. The question I will leave you with is this one. Will you? Because it is in the listening, in the sharing, that we connect in deep, meaningful ways, which is so important in a time when so many of us are feeling profoundly disconnected.
As we depart, may we go in peace. With open hearts, may we hear and be heard. Amen, and blessed be.